Hi there. Welcome to the presentation, What are Tangible Symbols? This will be an introduction of tangible symbols and a discussion about how they can be used functionally across settings. My name is Emily Macklin. I'm a speech pathologist, currently working in a school-based setting with deafblind individuals aged 3 to 22. I'm passionate about working with individuals with complex communication profiles, and I really enjoy being creative with AAC and assistive technology to provide access to communication. Thank you for joining. Objectives for this presentation include learning the foundational basics and terminology associated with this type of AAC, learn what tangible symbols are and who may benefit from them, review considerations when making tangible symbols, discuss how to implement tangible symbols to promote functional communication across settings, and understand how you can support communication using AAC supports like tangible symbols. So a really basic overview of what is AAC is that it refers to all ways besides speech that people use to communicate. I assume since we're at the AAC in the Cloud conference, that you have some interest or experience with AAC. So I won't go too in depth, but as we know, AAC includes no tech, low tech, mid tech, and high tech options. I included some examples here, and it's a really broad term referring to all ways besides speech that people use to communicate. Really important to define off the bat is what is a symbol? So as a symbol is something that stands for something else. What it is representing is referred to as the referent, and that term will be used throughout this presentation. So what it is representing is the referent. A printed or spoken word, a sign, a line drawing, a picture, those are all symbols. So I put some examples here. The sign stop is a symbol for the concept to stop. The printed word STOP is a symbol for stop. A stop sign is a widely recognized symbol for stop. And then a line drawing of stop is another symbol for stop that many people may recognize. So these are all symbols referring to the concept of stopping. And why I bring that up is because we're going to kind of open our minds to more ways those symbols can look if widely used symbols such as spoken words, signed words, printed words aren't accessible to some. Also, you may see in the literature or in different research about tangible symbols, tactile symbols, tangible visual symbols. For the purpose of this presentation, they are all referring to the same things. They're terminology that have been coined by different researchers over time. For the purpose here, they are referring to the same thing. I just also want to do a quick overview of what is total communication, since it will be referenced in this presentation as well. So total communication is an inclusive and flexible approach to language learning and use. It incorporates all means of communication, which may include spoken language, sign language, which could be in-air sign language or tactile sign language, signing into someone's hands. It can include natural gestures, finger spelling, body language, printed text, Braille, tangible symbols, including whole objects, partial objects, and tangible symbols like we'll talk about today, picture symbols, other types of AAC, and more. The goal is to optimize language development in whatever way is most effective for the individual. It's really a philosophy, not so much a methodology. So for each individual exposed to a total communication approach, this may look differently, with the overarching goal being the same, is to provide access to multimodal language in any way that's accessible to the learner. Okay, so one more vocabulary terminology kind of housekeeping before we get started. Core vocabulary and fringe vocabulary. So core vocabulary, those high frequency vocabulary words. They're a relatively small number of words that make up the vast majority of what's communicated day to day. They're usually consistent from one person to another across ages, environments, activities. An appropriate use of core vocabulary is essential to effective communication, which many researchers have come up with those findings. So I did link a few there. And fringe vocabulary is extended vocabulary. It may be extremely personally relevant to your learner, a specific environment or activity. and vocabulary words that are used infrequently, despite their high meaning to the learner. But they do make up a small portion of what is communicated day to day. So for total communication, you need both core and fringe vocabulary. Okay, so AAC systems, there are many systems available today, as I'm sure this conference will provide you access to learn all about. But today they are largely visually based, which leads to the question, what if you don't have vision, or you have low vision, or cortical or cerebral vision impairment, otherwise known as CVI, or multiple disabilities, including visual impairment, MDVI. So just food for thought is there's a lot of AAC out there, but a lot of it requires vision. So let's think about what if that's not an option. So what is a tangible symbol? A tangible or tactile representation of an object, person, activity, event, concept that's used for expressive and receptive communication. And we will talk about both in this presentation. So here are some examples of tangible symbols. Here's a small book with a Braille label under it, a board with lots of different representations, and then also an embedded symbol of a cup that says, I want something to drink underneath. Okay, so tangible symbols can look many different ways, and we will be talking about that. So who uses these? I bolded no one size fits all, because that's the most important point to drive home, that these are highly individualized. But thinking about profiles, you might consider people with multiple disabilities, including visual impairment, who may have difficulty using verbal speech or other systems such as sign language, maybe due to motoric limitations or concerns. Individuals with developmental delays or disabilities, intellectual disabilities, sensory or visual disabilities, that includes deaf blindness, low vision, CVI, learners who benefit from a multisensory approach to language, and individuals who have difficulty with one-to-one correspondence between widely available symbols, like we talked about before with the stop sign, a photo of a stop sign, a sign for stop, the written word stop. So if they have trouble connecting a widely available symbol with its referent due to sensory impairment or a variety of etiologies, we may consider tactile or tangible symbols for them. Okay, and one more note is deaf blindness. So I currently work with deafblind individuals. I just wanted to make a note in case that's a term you're unfamiliar with, that deaf blindness does occur on a spectrum from mild impairments in hearing and vision all the way to complete deaf blindness. So I just want, if that's a new term to you, to open your eyes to kind of how wide and vast that spectrum may be when we think about sensory channels that are available for language learning. Okay, and why are these supports beneficial? So they don't rely on strong visual acuity or perception, and they do not place high demands on cognition or memory. So Rowland and Schweigert in 2000 listed out these factors that remain true to this day. So the iconicity, or how concrete a symbol is, how similar it is to its referent, is a big part of tangible symbols. So the opposite of iconicity being, or concreteness being arbitrary. So how closely related a symbol is to its referent versus kind of no logical connection between the symbol and its referent would be more of an arbitrary symbol. Permanence, so the symbols not changing between uses, so their permanence and their consistency. How they can be identified tactually, so by touch, either in isolation or in combination with other senses. So maybe if someone's accessing with some vision and their tactile sense, that's a multisensory kind of way into these symbols. They're manipulable, so the learner can pick them up, they can explore them in whatever way is right for them. They can hand them to a communication partner. And then to make selections, they can be indicated through a simple motor response. It doesn't tax motor systems heavily. So by tapping, pointing, directed eye gaze, etc. There's lots of different ways that these can be flexible and used for a variety of different people. And cognitively, these these supports are taxing recognition skills, not recall skills. So that's another important part when you're considering all that's going into choosing the symbol or locating the symbol. They need to recognize it, not necessarily recall it each time. And the consistent motor placement, use of motor memory will be helpful for things like that too. All of that was talked about in depth by Rowland and Schweigert. So I will link their book at the end, and that's a really important source to check out. Okay, so when you think about iconicity, this is a perfect place to kind of talk about how tangible symbols can look many different ways. So a whole object is a tangible symbol. A partial object is also a tangible symbol. And a tangible or tactile symbol, which is what I refer to as those smaller card-based mounted symbols. These are all tactile or tangible representations. So you may start with a whole object and then over time become a little bit more arbitrary. So trade-offs you want to consider is how concrete the representation is versus the size, the weight, the bulkiness, portability, considerations like that. So if you have the whole object, that is the most concrete or iconic representation of the referent you can get. It's the exact same referent. You may then mount that onto a symbol backing. That can be a whole object representation. It might become a little smaller, becoming more of a partial object, becoming even smaller, therefore more lightweight and portable for a smaller tactile symbol later on. This learners can be introduced to these in any order. You might want to start with whole objects and become more arbitrary as you go, which would be going from partial object to tactile symbol. Or you may start right at the level of tangible or tactile symbols. It's really going to depend on your learner, and I would consult the teacher of the visually impaired and the speech pathologist kind of making those decisions. But as you get a little bit more arbitrary towards here's a light up spinner, you have the whole object, becomes a partial object, and then it just becomes the bottom of the tactile symbol. What it does preserve is the button that turns it on. So for tactile learners, I use these symbols quite often. Part of their experience with this object is the actual pushing in of the button, and that is what lights up the spinner itself. So that was a salient part of the symbol that I wanted to preserve, and that worked quite well. So it does maintain some salient parts of the referent while also losing some of the weight and bulkiness, just considering how difficult it might be to navigate through the community with a lot of different whole object symbols throughout a school day, etc. We want to be as supportive as possible while also being realistic and keeping robust access to language. We wouldn't want that to be a limitation to take language symbols away. So just something to think about if this is on the newer side to you. So why do we use tangible symbols? To increase independent communication skills, to increase the transition, to support the transition from pre-symbolic to symbolic communication, to access the curriculum, to create calendar systems and activity schedules, and to develop time concepts and sequencing skills. So receptively, these can be used in a student's schedule or calendar system. It can support transitions between activities or places and help them anticipate what's to come and increase their independence within routines. So here I have two examples. I have a tactile symbol schedule. It's more book-based with this kind of bell text material that Velcro attaches nicely to, displaying art, which is represented by a glue bottle, and then a pink bean bag, which represents relax. Feels like a bean bag that one might relax on. So that is one of my students' schedules. Just an example, they will flip through the book to make their schedule and then reference it throughout the day. And another example here is of a whole object schedule. So we have reading time or a book. Then we have this orange squishy spiky ball. Then there's a bottle. So that would represent feeding time. So it might be reading, then OT, occupational therapy, and then time to eat. And if the student's experience of eating is through a bottle, that would be most meaningful to them. just another example from that same schedule system. I really like this whole object schedule. It takes 3 at a time. So for that learner, that might be kind of just enough meeting them where they're at, but just pushing a little further. So they might go on a trip to the bathroom, and then they have art class, and then it's time to eat. What I really like too is there's a little light above the diaper representing bathroom. And that is the one that's showing what's happening now, kind of a visual cue of where we are right now and then what's to come. So it's really laying the foundation for early sequencing and time skills. Really a nice schedule system using whole objects. Tangible symbols in a schedule can look like this. So we just talked about that book, and they also can be mounted. The student can handle quite a lot throughout the day. So today is, and the day of the week, the student makes with their staff the day of the week, that part of morning meeting together, and then they set up their schedule together throughout the day. So those are smaller tangible symbols that the student organizes left to right throughout the day. First then supports. So I hope we all know and love first then supports. It's an option for language, really simple, concrete language. First this, then this. You want to be really consistent with the language you use. And I just want to open your eyes to this in a tactile manner. Of course, remembering that when I am using this, I am also using a total communication approach with the tangible symbols as being one mode that I'm using when discussing these concepts. So I'm also using tactile sign language. With this learner, I have that I have this board for. We are also using tactile sign language, and I'm speaking at the same time. So I would say something like first car and then Starbucks, while pairing each with its symbol, guiding her hand over car, signing car, and then guiding her hand over the straw that represents Starbucks. It is an actual Starbucks straw, and then saying Starbucks. Okay, so first then supports can go a really long way. It's simple and concrete language that helps the learner or the individual really understand what's next, what's after that. That anticipation goes a really long way. Okay, so now let's talk about, we talked a little bit about how receptively tangible symbols can support you, but now let's talk about expressive language. So these can be used for choice making, but not just choice making. Okay, so there's a lot more than choice making, which is a really powerful part, but it's not everything. I don't want you to feel like it's only choice making. That's a big part I hope you can take away from this presentation, is how much more it can be than that. So an individual having more control over their environment, indicating if they want more or to be finished. Language expansion, so symbol combination, and think about that in multiple modes. So they could access one word or express one word with a sign like more, and then touch the symbol that they want more of. It can be multimodal. It can be all with tangible symbols, any combination. But the goal is for language expansion. So combining more than one symbol to kind of achieve that. Asking for help or assistance, including medical needs. I did link in one of the photos down below, one of my students has pretty severe asthma. So a few times a day, he does need his inhaler. So something, and he knows when he needs it. He's not breathing quite right, and he's really struggling to breathe. So we put a chip on the back, so there's some voice output, and we'll talk about mixing mid and high tech with tangible symbols later on in this presentation. But there is a chip on the back that says, I need my inhaler. And when he pushes that down, anyone in the room, if they weren't directly looking at him, can hear that. And then he can have some support getting that inhaler and getting it quickly, because that is a huge medical need. Also, just asking for help, which is so general and can be used in almost any context or opportunity, but that's a pretty specific one. I think it's important to drive home medical needs as being something that these supports can help with. And also commenting, I like this, I don't like this. The possibilities are pretty much endless, good and bad. I just want to make sure that we drive home it's not just choice making, and that is awesome and a big part of it. There's so much more. So if making tangible symbols are new to you, what I want to really highlight is the thought process of what's the most salient part of the referent. Okay, so think about the user's experience when you're considering the activity that you're symbolizing. So a Play-Doh lid might be a great symbol for someone who takes the lid off the Play-Doh themselves. They feel it. That's what they're engaging with, that they're taking it off. A stacker ring. For this student, I was thinking about what the student's experience with stackers were. Usually we build going up, 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 and taking it on and off, up and down, things like that. But originally I just put one stacker ring, a real ring from an old set that we didn't have all the pieces to. Always hold on to things when you, or you'll find, pro tip, hold on to things when you lose a few pieces. They make for great tactile symbols. So I had one ring on, and I felt it didn't represent the activity because the student rarely felt one ring in isolation. The whole concept of the activity is to put them on and off, taking them together. So I ended up gluing two rings on top of each other, and it worked really successfully. The student was able to feel one. Then we got to talk about how they're being built up, narrating about why that symbol was chosen and made to represent that activity. And then here is a Connect 4 piece. Hard to get more concrete than that. You have the exact piece right from the game. It will feel exactly like the game piece does feel. With that, it's small, so it's easy to mount, but just be careful and consider your individual learner and how tightly or securely that is attached to the mount backing. Thinking about small pieces and choking hazard. So if this is a symbol that may be mouthed, you just want to be really, really confident with the gluing or attachment style that you've used. Just a consideration to think about. And be careful with miniatures. So for a student who has this Land Rover, really cool self-driven car as an activity, car, you may think car, awesome, Matchbox car, so small, easy to symbolize, put right on the backing, easy, done. But then I'm just encouraging you to think about how that has a lot of visual bias. So with your experience as a person who's sighted, if you are a person who is sighted and has access to vision, just encourage you to consider how that may be taking your visual experience into account more than a student who maybe is not accessing with vision. So think about what they're experiencing with this car. Does the small Matchbox car really have the same level of meaning to them as the actual car that they are driving alongside someone? Maybe, maybe not. So just a consideration to really think about for a student of mine who does have a car like this, really awesome activity that they really enjoy. I actually found a piece of PVC pipe and I had it curved and a little bit of a bend put into it. So it felt like the steering wheel. So the steering wheel is actually what the student is holding when they are driving this car. And this student does access with a bit of vision. So I put in some pink background as a visual cue because the student does not have really strong acuity. However, colors, overall colors, they are perceiving. So that's kind of a background visual cue. And the symbol is really individualized for that student specifically. So it feels like part of the steering wheel of the actual car. So just be careful with miniatures. They do often utilize quite a lot of visual bias. These things don't have to be expensive. Some non-toxic paint and a little bit of creativity with household and construction materials can go a long way. So I believe this was at Home Depot. You can see this PVC pipe, this elbow end felt like the steering wheel, available for 70 cents if you've got some non-toxic paint, because if you're considering the symbol could be mouthed or orally explored, that is, you want to make sure it's a non-toxic material. There you go. That's an awesome idea for a symbol. I was able to find a PVC pipe and then have it curved by some engineering help. However, if you don't have that kind of help, this is already in a kind of curved shape just to get brainstorming. whisks. So I'm not sure if you've seen the miniature whisks before. They're really cute, but they do have a lot of visual bias to them. So if you're thinking about when you're actually whisking, maybe you're engaging in a cooking activity with a student, what are they actually holding? It's that handle. So instead of a mini whisk, which could be really exciting, it's so small, it'll easily mount. Think about the actual user's experience. And maybe you could buy an extra whisk, have the handle cut off and mounted, and that would be a really awesome and concrete symbol for the whisk, taking the user's experience into consideration. So let's brainstorm together. So a lot of my time is spent brainstorming symbols, how to make them the most meaningfully as I can. So I'd like to do a brainstorm together to kind of get the wheels turning. So many of my students have these bumper cars at home. They were a really big holiday gift in the past year or so, and they tend to love them. So we want to find things that are really motivating and meaningful to the student, to find kind of early targets. If they really are motivated to communicate about it, it's a perfect way in. So, okay, here we're thinking about the bumper car. Then we think about the students sitting on the bumper car. They may have needed some adult assistance to get into their bumper car. And now they're seated, they're buckled in. Where are their hands? Well, these have the ability to be remote driven or using these toggles on either side. So I was thinking about how my student, when she goes on, she moves her hands back and forth to direct the car. So where her hands, they're with the toggle. Okay, so with that, I ended up with this. Here's the referent. I ordered an old gaming system. I think you can find a lot on eBay. Things don't have to be too expensive. I deconstructed the bottom base of it and I embedded it into a symbol. That really feels like what her experience is like. So that is an example of how to make a pretty concrete symbol with user's experience in mind. Now with this, the pairing of the symbols with the referent repeatedly is one of the most important things I'd love to drive home today. So you're going to want to guide the individual's hand from the referent to the symbol to the referent, back and forth as many times, not at once, guide them and then narrate about what's similar or what's different about them, discussing perhaps why that symbol was made. So if you took the toggle switch and then put it next to the actual bumper car and moved it back and forth and had the student feel, that would be a really good opportunity to talk about how they are the same or they feel similar. So consider that, and pairing the use of the symbol over and over in meaningful and natural context. Over and over, when you think you've paired enough, pair some more, because really it's hard to overdo this. Over and over in meaningful and natural context will lead to a deep understanding of the symbols and kind of generalizing how they can be used. Pair, please. I feel like a lot of my time is spent with school teams and families, encouraging them to pair the symbols with their referent. This really will be a make or break kind of part of the symbol experience. So one of my students has some different physical therapy choices with tactile symbols. So she can be on the mat or in her stander, or she can drive the car, all different options. So this mat is a small piece of mat that was actually taken from, I believe, a small chair arm piece that the physical therapist could speak to a little bit better, but it does feel exactly like a gymnastics mat that we are using in our physical therapy space. So pair each time, feel it, feel the actual mat back and forth. It will go a really long way to eventually just using the symbol and asking, would you like floor mat time or to start in your stander, if you have symbols for both. And then here's an example of me pairing the steering wheel symbol right next to a car we have in school, generalizing that it can be used for multiple self-driven cars. Okay, so now we're going to talk about building language with tangible symbols. So I want to talk about tactile carrier phrase or sentence starters, how we can model use across settings as often as possible, and symbols can be combined using multiple modes. So I really like the Tactile Connections Kit. That's by American Printing House, APH. They have these different colored backings, and the top of each type of word feels different. So if you are accessing with vision, you can notice that the color changes are meaningful. And if you're accessing without vision, you can feel the top, kind of a scalloped edge or a pointed edge or a flat edge. All of those have different meanings. So those are really helpful cues when you're thinking about building language, that not everything is the same. You might have a sentence starter or a verb attached to a noun, or a describing word attached to a noun, or a person attached to a verb, et cetera, et cetera. So I do like that kit a lot. And the symbol backings, that Tactile Connections Kit, we will talk about a little bit more, but I believe it is eligible with the federal quota. So that is an exciting piece of news too, because sometimes materials can add up in cost. So things that are eligible with the federal quota, exciting. Here's some examples. So green are verbs. So here's some examples I've made. So open and close. We have a piece of metal or a hinge of sorts that actually swings open and closed, and then the closed one is just stays closed. Then we have this handle, this knob of sorts. That's actually my symbol for turn. So we can generalize how you can turn an item, or, my turn, actually turning. We can generalize these really functional words. Stop, we have go in the picture to the right of it. Just some examples about building language. So we don't want to get stuck just at that fringe vocabulary, those most meaningful words to the learner. They could be their favorite toys, activities, people, etc. We want to build carrier phrases with that. So a really good opportunity, an example, say they're doing some choice making and you give them 4 tactile choices of preferred games, perhaps with a foil in there, depending on what your targets are. Pairing want with their selection over and over, not necessarily requiring them to select want with their selection, but pairing it. So maybe you offer want and then help them put their answer or their selection next to want. Really good opportunity for exposure to the word want and the concept of want, which would lead later on to really functional gains with their communication skills. So here's an example of how we can do some carrier phrases and some sentence starters with tactile symbols, as I was describing. So the background here is actually a Prox Talker, which is an AAC device made by Logan Tech. So I have a few students who utilize Prox Talkers with tactile attachments. We will talk about mid-tech kind of plus tangible symbols in a little bit. But for this case, we have I want. I actually made that sentence starter. Then I put the choices out for my student and he put on iPad. I want iPad. Then together we tactually guide. I want iPad. So using that total communication approach, we have built the sentence together. I want iPad. I go playground. I go to the playground. And when I'm verbally saying it, I would say it with proper grammar. I go to the playground, just showing what the actual symbols themselves are representing. Need, inhaler. So that's we were talking about with the inhaler symbol. That inhaler symbol can be put on if that's need at that moment. I would pair need with it. That's really important to really concretely understand that that's a need. And then go bathroom, go being used in stop go activities, and also places. Going places are all really meaningful context. So showing how generalizable the word and term go is. Go bathroom. So if the student asks to go to the bathroom, ask for bathroom, I'm pairing go bathroom. Learning over time with the meaningful context that we go to places. Go being a really functional word to deeply understand. So the TAALC Core board, I believe this is found on Paths to Literacy. I believe this is out of Kentucky. They've done a really nice job making a core board with tactile or tangible symbols. I really like it, how how they've symbolized many different important functional contexts, and given the layout, the symbols will stay in consistent locations. So you can learn more about this on Paths to Literacy, and all of the blog posts and articles and research I'm mentioning will be linked at the end. But the student, what I like about this is the student doesn't have to tactually and visually scan each individual one. Over time, they're going to use motor memory to learn where their symbols are, or the symbol they need is, so that they can quickly locate it. So they showed the full core board and then also a reduced core board, which might be a place to start with a concept like this. And I really like how it sets the stage for continued growth without reinventing the wheel. So when I'm brainstorming about tangible symbol use, I'm meeting my student where they're at, and I'm meeting their language level and their needs where they're at, but I'm also brainstorming 3 or 4 steps ahead of where I hope to get with them, because I would hate when we build skills to then reinvent the wheel and change things on them. Often we are talking about individuals with complex profiles, and we don't need to add obstacles for them. What we need to do is set them up for functional success later on. So something to think about is where they're headed. This offers opportunities to build literacy skills while expanding communication skills. I really like what they've done here. Another thing to think about is print or Braille exposure. So please work with your teacher of the visually impaired, TVI, if you have one, to determine if print or Braille will be more accessible or supportive as a written modality, and if applicable, label the symbols. So if you're using Braille, prompt the individual to guide their finger over the Braille while exploring the symbol. Overall, this is providing print awareness for emerging readers. And what I think is awesome to think about is if you have a tangible symbol labeled with Braille and the student becomes really strong with their Braille literacy skills, over time, you might be able to fade the use of the actual tangible symbol to just the Braille word, as long as it's accessible and they understand it. Over time, that would be so much more portable and lightweight. If they learn to Braille themselves using a Brailler, options are endless, actually, for what they can communicate. So just want to keep in mind kind of how we think about where we're at and how we're setting the stage for a few steps out. Okay, so creation of a symbol-rich environment. So what I want to think about is if spoken, signed, or visual symbols aren't available or accessible for creating a symbol-rich environment, we need to brainstorm how else we can do that. So what I want us to really remember is that all symbols are abstract until we build meaning with our real life lived experience. Like the word stop itself doesn't have meaning to it, but we build meaning to it from a really early age. That stop means stop. The spoken word stop, the sign stop, a stop sign means stop. So we can build real life. Through our real life lived experience, we can build meaning. So I have some examples within the home to talk about how tangible or tactile symbols can be used to create this symbol-rich environment. So I have one of my students, she has tangible symbols located throughout her apartment, which is located within her family's home. So wherever she navigates, she trails along the wall to kind of find where the doorway will begin to enter the room. So wherever her hand is placed, we naturally found kind of that height, and then we placed a symbol labeling the room, so she knows what room she's entering into. This is an example of bathroom. Here's her bedroom, which is also where her laundry is. So her bedroom, her bed is in there, her clothing, also laundry. So bed and laundry room. Discussing this symbol discusses kind of what is found in the room. Kitchen. Wooden spoon represents cooking, and then she has a bottle cap and tab. Those are her recycling. She has different recycling bins that she is working. One of the tasks she works on is sorting recycling and then going into the community and doing recycling tasks and jobs. So That is something done in the kitchen. So this overall symbol represents kitchen really meaningfully for her. So context-based symbols, here's where her clothing is. So I've labeled just with a word here what is labeling what those tangible symbols are. So where the different articles of clothing are stored, and then they're placed in shirts and pants so she can be more independent with her dressing routine. The context-based symbols, we do want an identical set in the actual location they naturally exist. So if she's guiding her hand over her dresser and clothing systems, she can feel that, oh, that's where bras are stored, that's where socks are stored. But also if she wants to talk about socks, her socks are uncomfortable, she likes her socks, she needs socks, something like that, we will have an identical set of these symbols made at hand for on-the-go use and other purposes. Another example here is in her pantry, we have labeled bags of chips or popcorn, kind of bagged snacks, cups of fruit, and then we have an empty container on the left. Those are cups of cookies, a huge hit. So those are located where they will be stored. So if she wants a snack, she could feel her symbol. Okay, those are where my fruit cups are. Those are where my bagged items are, and those are my cups of cookies. But there also are an identical set. So when she's in the grocery store, we can have a tangible shopping list for her. She can request at snack time. We don't want to take away the symbols from their natural location because that's such functional, meaningful language labeling. So there will be two sets of everything. Talking more about context-based symbols. So the student has a swing in her apartment. So on the swing itself, where she gets in, we kind of located the place where she kind of holds it steady and gets herself into her chair. There she can feel the symbol for swing. The actual symbol for swing is a piece of loose blue tubes cut right from the swing directly. So there's one right on the swing itself. And then we also have identical sets for choice making. So that could look like this. So if she was given 4 leisure choices, do you want to swing, listen to music, put on some lotion, or play Zingo? We would just guide her hand over with 4 choices to make sure she felt all of her choices. And if she wanted to swing, she would take that off and either hold it, tap it, hand it to you, and that would be her choice. Hey guys, I want to swing, with the exact copy of the symbol also located on the swing. So while she's on it, we can pair it with the swing itself, the symbol and the swing, that they are, the symbol represents this referent. So we'll talk a little bit about functional routines and activities of daily living, or ADLs, use with these tangible symbols. So we already talked a little bit about dressing and sorting clothing. We will get into a little more detail about laundry, also grocery shopping and mealtime, and then trips into the community. So the student's clothing, we talked about the context-based symbols with her clothing symbols. Also, she sorts her clothing when she's getting undressed, when she has dirty clothes. With the zip ties, we attached a little bit of a larger symbol to the hampers. So shirts and pants go in one. So she'll feel what article she took off and put it in the desired place, because then she's working through her own laundry routine. So her clothes are already sorted. So shirts and pants, underwear and socks go into another bin. So we are sorting using those tactile cues. So I took the underwear and the socks, as you can see, and took a small piece of both, put them on a little bit of a larger symbol. Underwear and socks go into that bin. Shirts and pants go into that bin. It is labeled with just shirts because at that time when I made it, we didn't have a symbol for pants yet. We were waiting for an old pair of pants to be worn out. So we'll talk about that, but that's why she got used to it. I'm not going to change the symbol. Once she knows it, she knows it. That's her symbol. Awesome. So save old clothing. So think about what the texture, what the article of clothing, what about that article the individual interacts with. And then when you identify an old piece of clothing that really represents that concept well, store it in a special place so you can cut it up for more symbols later on, because we do need to think about durability, and with lots of repeated use, things will wear out. So you don't want to then start over with a new symbol completely. And what I mean about what part of that article does the individual interact with? For example, if the learner is like adjusting their bra strap and that's part of their experience with bra more than other parts of the bra, that would be something to consider, and you would want that symbolized because that's probably the most salient part of that article for that individual person. So that's why we have the strap leaning into the bra material itself as her symbol. And that could look completely different from someone else who spends more time on the clasp of the bra, for example. So it is quite individualized, and I hope this sets a foundation for your brainstorm. So things to consider, and we'll talk about this after each functional activity. Can you build it into a routine that allows you to really consistently expose that language and those symbols? So if you can build it into a routine, you automatically have a lot of access to get right into that, to really drive home language concepts consistently, daily. Can you pair it with the referent constantly? As we said, pair, please. Opportunities like that will drive home the meaning. And did you take the individual's experience into account when making the symbol, either alongside them? Sometimes we make symbols with our students, just careful with hot glue for safety reasons, but did you take their exact experience into account? So just kind of some 3 things to kind of think after making or while making symbols before implementing. Now laundry. So laundry, we said, is in her bedroom. So right on the laundry machine itself, I have a context-based symbol. I have it's actually a large bubble wrap bubble that I cut out carefully. It feels like a laundry detergent pod. So something I want you to consider with this is the durability of the materials that you use. So a Tide Pod, for example, you cannot attach to a mount. That would be so concrete because that's exactly what the student is using. But the heat will disintegrate it because they are made to disintegrate with heat and water, and specifically that would not be a very durable symbol. So I found that a large bubble wrap bubble does feel quite like the Tide Pod. It's a little bit mushy. You can kind of push it in. But also a bubble wrap bubble can pop really easily. So if the individual really needs something super concrete, this symbol worked really well for us. But what I did is I actually, on the back of the bubble, I put a little bit of Velcro, right? And then I Velcroed it right onto the mount instead of gluing it on. So this lets me really easily replace the bubble that I use, because if it becomes popped, it's less concrete or iconic of a symbol itself. So something to think about is the durability. So a bubble wrap bubble isn't overly durable. It is really inexpensive and easy to find, however. So for us, that worked, and I Velcroed it and I made 20 extras just on the side so they can quickly be replaced. And over time, the student will likely learn that they do pop and that the pop still represents this laundry detergent pod. Something to consider though. And then can you build it into a routine and pair it with reference? And does it take into the account the individual's experience? Food. So we talked about that in the pantry, the cookie cups, the bags of chips or popcorn, and then fruit cups. So then I have listed out some different food symbols that this student uses. And then on the right here, I have a little choice board of, do you want bread, a waffle, a fruit cup, bag of chips, a banana, or a cup of cookies rather. So that could be presented, and you can just guide the individual's hand to make sure they felt all their choices and they can take off the one they want. And field size should be determined on an individual basis. If they should have 2 choices or all the choices, I would look carefully and speak with the speech pathologist about that, collect some data about how they're using their symbols. But more is awesome if they can handle that. So work towards the more choices, the better. I like all the symbols to be there if possible. So with this student, we also have a tactile shopping list, which is really cool, I think. So we have her bag of chips, her cookie cups, and banana. So we go to the grocery store, then we feel the symbol bag of chips. Okay, let's go. We walk to the aisle with the bags of chips. We pair it with the bag of chips. We put it into the cart, finished with bag of chips. Next up is the cookie cups. So we will fill the symbol. I would take the bag of chips off and probably put it on the back. Or if she fills it again, just say finished with that, move down. Cookie cups, let's go get them. We get them, we pair the symbol. It's the same, put it in the cart. And then we end with a banana, which is a preferred symbol for a preferred item for this student specifically. So we always end with our banana. It's really concrete. So we fill the banana. Awesome. Get the banana, same thing. And then we go check out. So it's a tactile shopping list. And this way she has more independence over getting the snacks that she wants and she loves in her own home. Then she can stock her own shelves. Her bags of chips go here. Her cookie cups go here. The goal being meaningful independence and control over her day and her life. So we want those considerations again. First, then supports we talked about before. I'm just going to give an example of how they can be used in a community setting. So with this student, she packages up a whole lot of different snacks and items at school. And then we go into the community and we drop them off to deliver to familiar community members and partners. So for this example, we have first car, and then the police station. That's for a delivery. So we tell her we're doing a delivery. It's the hard work that she made on campus. She packaged up some different bags of goodies and treats, and now we practice some social communication skills delivering those. So first, then support, first car, and police station. Once we get there and we're finished, car, and then school. That happens to be our symbol for school. So car, then school, really concretely showing what we're doing, what order, giving her the information she needs about where she's going in the transition that's about to occur. So pairing the symbols and reference, just like we were talking about before, but this time in the community. So the symbol, ahead of time, I had gone to the police station and felt around their signs and talked to different people who worked there about which signs are not going to change anytime soon. You wouldn't want something like a poster that could be changed quickly. This box mounted on the wall specifically is one they identified that will not change. So that's a perfect opportunity for a symbol, something that won't change, is at the height where we can kind of trail over and then guide her hand to. So what we did here, you can see her hand's on top of mine. So at any point she can take her hand off. I don't use hand over hand sign language when I'm using tactile sign, it's hand under hand. So my hands are always under hers when we're tactily signing. So she has the ability to take off if she's not interested in talking to me. So here my hand guided us over to the box. Then I just gave her a little touch cue so she can feel. And then I signed P-O-L into her hands, just like the sign has P-O-L, just like her symbol. So we are pairing it in the community, building that meaning. We also have this little information card with a tactile attachment. So it says her name and that she has a special treat, because this is in the context of a delivery. We keep it general so that it can be used for any type of delivery. We want consistent use is the goal. And then the tactile attachment is a little piece of a Ziploc bag. She usually packages into little plastic bags. Her symbol for packaging is there on the right. That's why it's meaningful to her. So when I guide her hand, it's just a laminated piece of paper that is not overly meaningful to her. But then at the end, she feels the tactile attachment. Yes, that's what we're here to deliver. My hard packaging work. That's why we're here. So we're always narrating about what we're doing and why. So here we are in the police station, as we were talking about before. So she hands over her card that she has a special treat. She hands over the bag that she worked really hard to package. And then here you see her handing it to our community partner, a police officer. And then he is signing thank you to her. So really awesome. And she gets to expand her social network with different people in her community while doing really meaningful work. In the same way, she loves the pink drink Starbucks. So here's a Starbucks order with a tactile attachment. So this is all the info that the cashier at Starbucks needs in order to place the information into their computer and place the order. So you need a name, the order. She has a reusable cup that she uses. It has the size. And then on the side, once again, I have her fill her card. That's what we're handing over. And then there's the straw. This is what we're obtaining. So we are obtaining our pink drink Starbucks order. So there's her Starbucks symbol and then the order card with the tactile attachment, and that's for her. And the identical symbol on its side could be used in a first then support, like we talked about, car and then Starbucks, something like that. So ideas of community places when she goes to the gym or rec center, what's meaningful for her is the scan in. That's new. It's on a key ring. There's a teeny little card she scans in. That's something specific about the gym. Police station, we talked about the sign. We paired it, built meaning in that way. Starbucks, the straw is similar to her real life experience when drinking it. And then the library, she used to do work at stamping books. That was one of her vocational tasks. That was an older symbol used for that. But she generalized it and she knows that means library. So we're also signing it and saying library, but also she knows that that stamp means library. She used to do a lot of work there. Think about things in my toolbox. I'm just going to breeze through this just for the sake of time, but things that I always have around me are hot glue guns and a lot of glue sticks. Veltex is that material that Velcro sticks really nicely to. I've used throughout the presentation. Velcro scissors. Pro tip, because regular scissors, when you cut Velcro, adhesive sticks to it. So I'd look for specific scissors that don't have adhesive, make them sticky and ruin the scissor. Strong adhesive tape, symbol backings, which we'll talk about, zip ties, command strips, especially when thinking about in the home. In the school setting, in my office, I have a really symbol-rich environment, but I don't mind placing Velcro a lot of places. I have a lot of Veltex boards, etc. But when I'm in someone's home, I am thinking about creating that symbol-rich environment, but also not destroying furniture or anything that maybe wouldn't be preferable to the family. So I'm thinking about zip ties, command strips work really effectively to attach to different pieces of furniture, walls, etc. Since we are just being respectful while creating a symbol-rich environment, we are in the home. Hot glue is your friend, but be careful. One, because it's hot, you can get hurt, but also too much glue may distract from the material that you're symbolizing. So here's an example of beads that just were being quite stubborn. So they over time needed a lot of hot glue in order to stay on. The student maybe is ripping at them if they're a little dangly. So you're really trying to glue them on. Then the glue dries and you feel them and they no longer feel like the beads that you were hoping to represent. Something to think about is the glue that you're using, to be careful. This buckle, the width and the whole feel of it is pretty much lost. All that you're left with is that little smooth portion on top with this much glue. Something to think about. So really, if vision is not in the equation, we need to think about tactually what the experience is and be careful with hot glue. Some different backing examples. I use this more as a resource for you. We talked about the APH Tactile Connections Kit. Project Core does some really awesome things with 3D printed symbols, so I will link them as a resource to check out. That's a possibility. Depends on the durability needs you have, what you have available. It doesn't have to be fancy. I use a lot of Kel-Tec, which is this rainbow colored smooth material, and also the Tactile Connections Kit. If all you have is some construction paper and a laminator, that works too. So we don't have to be fancy, just options to think about. You do want to consider the durability though. And then there also are some embedded cardboard symbols. So you may see those in black and white, different options. How do we present these symbols? So I've had success using storage clipboards found at office supply stores. They open up, and as long as the symbol is not too thick, the storage clipboard will close. It kind of can be carried like a briefcase, and then you have access to a lot of different symbols on the go. I've adapted with a Veltex board on front, so it's kind of a choice board or a first send board or whatever you need it to be on the front. And then inside you have a variety of other symbols. Different slant boards and Veltex boards can be mounted or freestanding. So here's that same example of first car and then Starbucks. On the back, I have a lot of different symbols ready to go. So then maybe we do Starbucks and then bathroom. So there's the bathroom symbol. There's the symbols for more, all done, lotion, squeezes. So if the student is feeling anxious in the community, those are some calm down strategies. We have a little bit of lotion to kind of cool down, something she really enjoys, or maybe she wants some deep pressure squeezes. So I use the back to have symbols ready on the go that we might need. So there is some thought going into before a community interaction to make sure we're set up for success. And then also a portable Veltex book or bag with straps, something to think about. It's really portable if you could put a strap on it. It could be more of a schedule system with a strap. So if the student really needs to know where they are in their day to anticipate what's to come, it's a really powerful strategy to have it with them so they can reference throughout their day. Or maybe it's a little bag or a strap onto some Veltex, and then it has different choices so that they can hand you at any point in time. I'm hungry. I'm telling you that I would like a bag of chips, something like that. Briefly, this can be a whole other presentation, but tangible symbols meeting mid and high-tech AAC. So Logan Tech makes a Prox Talker and a Prox Pad, which can be adapted with tangible symbols. As you can see there, they have voice output, which might be a good feature, a feature match that the SLP and the team will come up with as something that they're looking for. A mid-tech GoTalk device, like a GoTalk 9, there's different cell sizes, can be adapted with tangible symbols. You can Velcro those onto the cells and do something really functional on top, like more all done help. Just as a static, always there, really important to control the environment symbol set, and then within that activity, those specific tangible attachments. And then also there's the Tactile Talk Toolkit that pairs with the dynamic Go Talk Now app with tangible overlays. So that's an option to consider too, but you're really gonna wanna feature match and work carefully with the team and the SLP and maybe an AT specialist if there's one of those on your child or student's team. Resources to check out, please check out Paths to Literacy. It has some really great information and resources, a number of which I used throughout this presentation. I linked those there. I will be sharing these slides. So hopefully if you access them online, you'd be able to just click the link, or you can type those in. Those are the names of the articles and blogs used. So hopefully you can find those, and I will have a citation slide soon. APH has the Tactile Connections Kit. We talked a lot about that. They really can walk you through making some of these symbols. So here's a picture of the page for Tuesday and Wednesday, what they recommend. Then with materials I had available to me, here's what I made. So slightly different because it's based on what I had available, but I did use their ideas and it's worked really well. The American Printing House, APH, also has the standardized tactile augmentative communication symbols, stacks. So those are embedded symbols. They're a cardboard, a little bit thicker. They are embedded. Embedded symbols do take away a little bit of the tactile exploration, in my opinion. If something was Velcroed on, you could explore it as a whole object and put it back on. But if this feature matches as something that would be beneficial for your learner, it's something to consider, and they have pre-homemade sets, which is really awesome. And I think they're quite durable because of the backings, and since they are embedded, there's only so much exploration involved. Should be quite durable. Project Core, as I talked about, with those 3D printed symbols, they have different textures around edges, shapes, word classes, colors. So if you're accessing just with your tactile sense or with vision as well, those are meeting those needs. And then right on their website, they have instructions to 3D print the symbols. So really an interesting option if applicable to the person you have in mind. Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired has a tactile symbol directory on their website. So you can see all the different categories they listed, and then they have photos of what they use. They're also using shape of backing as a cue for the type of word and category. Really cool. Here's 2 examples pulled right from their website. Interesting to take a look through. The Assistive Device Center at Perkins School for the Blind creates custom adaptive equipment. They have a website that I linked there and a contact email. If you're thinking you want some of these slant boards or adapted devices or equipment, this is something, these materials they provide and they can make for cost. I'm not sure how many orders they're taking from outside of their campus at this time. I think they've been pretty busy, but you can feel free to reach out to them. They might be able to guide you of how you can make something yourself, or they might be taking orders for outside of their campus needs. So something to think about. Overall, if you think tangible symbols might be a good fit for someone you know, consult with the individual and their team. So really think about including the SLP, the teacher, the occupational therapist, the teacher of the visually impaired, the assistive technology specialist, the early intervention team, whoever you have on your child's team or your student's team, work together, and then get the team on board. And there's a lot of power in demonstration. So demonstrate how it can be used. The use of these symbols aren't necessarily intuitive. Work through it with the team, and show the benefits for the individual for buy-in. Highlights. Tangible symbols may be an appropriate fit for individuals with a variety of profiles. Expose the learner to core and fringe vocabulary. Keep it meaningful to the learner's experience. Think of the most salient part of their experience. Pair, please, symbols with what they represent and discuss similarities and differences. Embed new language concepts in routines when possible for building consistent practice and exposure. Keep it simple and use consistent language. Add print or Braille labels for print awareness and text exposure if appropriate. Get the team on board, demonstrate, take videos, take photos, share successes, and show how empower other team members, how they can support students in their setting. And you can do this. Thank you so much for coming. If you have questions or want to connect, please contact me via email. My email is esmacklin@gmail.com. And here are citations, and they are linked to the sources if you're able to access them, or you can type them in with their website or location. So thank you so much for coming.